Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, How to Digitally Transform Higher Ed with Drupal. Before we begin, I wanted to quickly go over a couple of housekeeping items for today's webinar. First, I want to encourage everyone to use the Zoom Q&A for any questions that come up during the webinar. We'll cover questions at the end of the presentation. Second, we typically get asked if the webinar will be recorded and available? And the answer is yes, the presentation will be recorded and emailed to you in the next few days. So a little about Media Current. We are the open source expansion partner. What this means is that we help organizations that want to elevate and advance their open source digital experience. We do this by aligning with our partners' business goals and needs and solve them with open source technologies. Our mission is to bring together the most talented team members to provide world-class solutions for the web. So to kick things off, I want to quickly introduce our team of presenters. I'm Jessie Gollenbecke, and I'm the marketing manager at Media Current. And then we're joined by Jay Calicott, the VP of Technical Operations, Cherie Hill, Creative Director, and Celeste Gomez, Digital Strategist here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Celeste, and it's nice to be with you today. I'm a digital strategist here at Media Current. Digital strategy here is a bit of a mix between some digital psychology, data analysis, and business analysis. So we're advocates for your users, and we connect the dots to help solve business challenges at the same time. So today we are going to basically give you some things to think about and to discuss internally before an upcoming redesign. Whether you're redesigning a site right now or it's upcoming in the next year, or as you know, you have to do it every few years, every 3 to 5 years. And so it's something to think about all the time. It could be applied at any stage, just things to think about. We're going to give you there. And we're also going to go into some solutions. We're going to talk about solutions to common challenges that we've experienced in the user experience of the site. And then we'll go into a programmatic solution that's a time saver that we use here at Media Current. Some of the education clients that we've worked with are listed here. We've spent the last 13 years helping some of the best known higher ed institutions in the US, exceeding the performance expectations of their Drupal platform. So going into the key strategic decisions that you want to be making before website redesign, I'll be covering 10 key decisions that will affect the success of the upcoming web design. These aren't necessarily things that have to be completely decided, but a conversation to be had internally is what the goal is here. However, simply discussing these topics at an early stage will be advantageous for your team. They will be advantageous for your web team and for your budget planning. So uncovering these topics when the designs or programming is already in motion might prove to result in some rework or some missed opportunities, subsequently affecting your timeline and your budget. So we listed these 10 topics. They're in the form of one main question, and then we give some talking points, questions for each that we use these types of questions in our own discoveries with clients. So we formatted these also into a checklist for you that you're going to be able to download as a PDF. And we wanted to make this super easy for you, available to save this checklist, PDF, call a meeting internally, and use that straight away as your ready-made agenda and to guide your discussions internally. So we'll link this to you before we end today, but right now let's dive in. So question number 1. What are the goals of our new website? Setting these goals will guide you in later decisions relating to content strategy, design, functionality, and future marketing efforts. Typically for higher ed, one of these goals is to increase enrollment applications, but we encourage you to go one step further and to try to drill down with some of these details to set additional smaller goals. So one example may be that you want to increase diversity overall, or you already have a diverse student body, but you want the website and the messaging to clearly reflect a diverse and inclusive environment. So if this is defined early on, this will affect the images you select in the design. It'll affect your on-page content, and will possibly affect functionality if you decide that you want to build support for multilingual pages, something like that. So another example might be that you might want to reduce confusion about a particular program. That's a common one. Or to increase alumni donations. That's another common one. You want to list these goals out as early as possible, because you'll be surprised that when you call everybody into a room, there might be different goals and different priorities. And so you want to get all in sync internally. So another type of goal that you can use is an internal inefficiency, something that's a bottleneck. You may not see how the website can resolve an issue with an internal process, but it absolutely can. And so just stating what that problem is important, because that'll help your web team or discussions later on figure out how to resolve that problem. It might be even just solved with data. It might be resolved within a design change. So identifying these bottlenecks in areas where you struggle will be very valuable down the line to yourselves and your web team. And knowing these issues will help you set yourself up so that you can measure success against them, and they'll help you prove ROI. And going into question number 2 is, should we keep or consolidate microsites? It's extremely common for higher ed entities to have multiple websites. So even having multiple websites in a single department, from a user's perspective, this can create more steps in their journey and tons of information to consume. So it might challenge their ability to accomplish a task or make a decision. So microsites do have their purpose, and they do serve a great purpose in certain instances, like, the athletic sites are usually on a separate microsite or something like that. However, many times they might not be necessary, and they are a result of internal choices versus not considering what the user might be experiencing when they're jumping around. So factors to consider around this is the audience completely different? Are they arriving with a different intention than those that would be browsing the main site? Many times a smart, intuitive design with additional navigation options and content flexibility will be able to resolve the need for a microsite. But if you find that microsites are still needed, you can plan for this ahead of time. And actually a little later on, Jay's going to show us a solution that will allow you to do this, streamline this process and do it easily and efficiently. But the point is to talk about that early on. Okay, question number 3 is, how do we maintain brand consistency? Having a brand guide is pretty standard for higher ed, especially since there are often multiple websites, emails, print materials, social channels, etc. So however, they are generally not updated, and they're generally not redistributed often. So as staff turns over, as time passes, some people have maybe never even seen it. So another factor to take into consideration is that the term brand has evolved, and today it means what people remember about you, which can take many forms and is perceived in many ways. So your brand guide should include messaging guidelines, how you speak to your audience, and this will guide the content publishers that are publishing the pages on the site, so you have a unified message. And to keep visual consistency across the web entities and throughout the site itself, a pattern library is a type of web style guide that sets the guides for how your web fonts, your buttons, your links, your images, and other content pieces are styled. And so that is super important to have. Either your web team might create one for you, but if you have one early on, that is something that is super helpful and saves a lot of time. And then lastly, it's also extremely important to adopt the mindset that your fixed brand colors may have to be adjusted for web accessibility. These are color and text combinations that are troublesome to view on screens, especially for those with color blindness or other visual impairments. So screens across all devices are calibrated differently anyway. So my screen can be showing me a purplish color and your screen can be more bluish color. So no two screens are likely to even show you the same color anyway. So adopting the mindset that it doesn't have to be an exact shade of orange. It could be a little bit darker against the white text so that you can read it. And 1 in 4 people in the US tend to have some kind of are inhibited some kind of with their web experience, to have some kind of disability issue. So your blocking out a lot of people if they're not able to read the content and understand your visual cues. Okay, so moving on from the brand consistency, we're going to jump into related, which I was just discussing, which is accessibility compliance. Accessibility includes the design, it includes the code, it includes the metadata attached to your content pieces, like alternative text when you upload an image. So users of screen readers and other assistive technology rely on this to understand what is being said in your content. So the general standard is to strive for an AA level compliance. However, this is not something that is done once at launch and remains compliant forever. Because content is continually being added, code is being updated for new features and fixes and security, it should be included as part of your website maintenance plan. So at MediaCurrent, we have some automated and manual testing tools that we do regularly. However, a very user-friendly tool we use for ourselves and that many of our clients use is something called Site Improve, and that is able to monitor all the pages on your site, site-wide. But at the very least, you can get a Chrome extension. The Site Improve has a software and a Chrome extension. So that Chrome extension can give you a at-a-glance view of where you stand now and to have the conversations of we need to keep an eye on this long-term. Jumping into question 5, what is our preference for content migration? So you'll want to determine if your content is still relevant, if it's still accurate, and if it's still serving your audience well. Many automatically assume that it'll be migrated over as is with, we're upgrading our site, just move everything over, and it's sometimes focusing on the development portion and not the content. But with a new design, as part of the discovery phase, you'll want to be revisiting your user personas, your audience, your analytics, and take an overall inventory and audit of what your content is truly doing for your audience. So is it working well to engage with your personas versus what pages need to be reworked to be a little clearer. So sometimes the content is totally fine. The content is clear and it speaks directly to the user and is written well, but the images need to be refreshed. Sometimes people just get tired of stock images that now in recent years are just becoming a little fakey looking, and you need to select those images to look more natural and maybe some actual on-campus images or updating the videos as well. And so in many cases you can use the same content, but you can just have to break up walls of text and because 80% of people are skimming content. So you want to break up those walls of text, and all you have to do is add headings and add images, and then you've refreshed the entire page. So there's different approaches to reformatting your content. And the important fact here is to take a look and decide, and don't just assume that you can migrate it all over. You don't want it to come up later on after you've already decided. You want to take a look at it carefully and look at your data and see if it's really serving your audience well. All right, moving on to question 6. Who will be responsible for content governance after the launch of a new site? So once this content has been audited, updated, and refreshed, and you've worked so hard to present it well within the new design, you will want to protect that investment and make sure that someone or someones are maintaining it in the same way. So you'll want to discuss who will be filling this role. Will it require full-time attention? Will they require training to make sure that best practices are being used? We usually recommend having a few gatekeepers that will ensure that things like alternative text is being used on images, which is an SEO factor and an accessibility factor, that they're going to describe the images well for accessibility. Page content is written in a clear about 8th grade level, reading level. Images will be sized appropriately before they're uploaded because that can slow down the page load. So things like that, they'll want to be also adhering to your brand standards and the writing style in your brand guide. Okay, question 7 is, when should we convert our PDFs? So PDFs are probably the one type of content that often pose the most challenges for users and are probably a thorn in the side of everyone working in user experience. So this should not be overlooked. First, they pose an accessibility issue because screen readers can't go into the document itself. And describe what is happening. Not to mention that they are already difficult to read and scroll through on mobile. So sometimes it's a fillable PDF and you're filling things out in the browser, and the browser is left to render that image for you, and there's often difficulty saving them out, and it's not the same as an actual web form. And so PDFs are basically a no-win situation on any site unless there's a specific reason for a supplemental download, such as the checklist we're going to give you today. So it should never replace the actual content on the web page. It should be a supplement. So the conversation should be had of how and when to convert those. That might take a while, and that might affect people's processes internally. So having a plan early on, you can do this and be working on it simultaneously as your site is getting built. Okay, question number 8. What is our protection plan for SEO? Many website redesigns will inevitably result in some SEO impact for your site's rankings. And this is due to changes in your navigation, your URL structures, your on-page content, and the code itself. So the key is to audit where you stand and develop a technical and on-page optimization plan for this pre and post launch process. So at the very least, by doing this, you can minimize any negative impact that might happen. But then at best, you might improve your rankings upon launch and increase the number of keywords that you rank for. So to clarify though, you don't necessarily have to perform an SEO audit on yourselves. And you don't have to do the SEO migration plan yourselves. But because most agencies like Media Current, we do that for you. However, this is part of the discovery process, and just discussing how important SEO is to you and requesting that you want an SEO audit. That is what the important factor is, if SEO is important to how people find your site. So discussing these internally will really help your web team set you up for success later on. Okay, number 9, how do we make data-driven decisions? At Media Current, one of our mottos is to do data-driven decision-making. And in the real world, outside of web agencies, this can sound like wishful thinking. But discussing this early and often will help you get there so much faster if you just adopt the mindset and have your team help you get there. So data can be used to bring issues to light. They can be used to justify any changes in your functionality or justify cost for those proposed changes. You'll want to identify which tracking tools are being used. For example, that would be Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Google Search Console, or the one I mentioned earlier, Site Improve. And more importantly, how is the data being used? A lot of clients of ours collect the data, but they don't know how to apply it. But the first step is just identifying, are we tracking efficiently? Do we have these tools in place? And so you also want to just figure out who has eyes on it and what is it saying about how the users are engaging with your site now. And any metrics that are unknown now can go in your nice to have list. You can just talk about, well, it would be nice to know how many students do this particular thing. So your web team will be able to put this in place for you fairly easily if it's just communicated early on. Okay, so the last question is, what is our MVP? And MVP in the development world is a term we use often, and that is your minimum viable product. So this is the version that is most prioritized launch critical features of your website. This does not have to be an all-encompassing list of features of everything you want in your website, but if there are items that has to be included, you will hold up launch for this particular thing, then that would be part of your MVP. Other features that will not be as critical right away can be listed for phase 2. One misconception that we hear a lot is that people think that phase 2 means way down the road and it's going to be out of sight, out of mind. But that isn't correct. Phase 2 can start immediately after launch. So you don't have to throw everything in the kitchen sink with the website launch because it can take over a year to build. But if you decide what is priority first, then you get to launch faster. Your web teams are used to iteration. They prefer it. So you get to launch faster, you launch, and then you start on the next phase and you update the site in a second iteration shortly after. So prioritizing these early on would be a way to help your timeline and your overall budget planning. And so now those are all the questions. Those are going to be given to you in a checklist at the end, and I'll pass it to Cherie to talk through some of the common challenges that we've helped work through with our higher ed clients.
Thanks, Celeste. My name is Cherie Hill, and I'm the creative director at Media Current. I've had the privilege to work with some of our higher ed institutions such as Georgia Tech, Harvard, Yale, Emory, and Alvernia, just to name a few. So now that we have a clear roadmap of how to plan a successful website redesign, let's take a little bit of time to discuss the challenges that we've seen some of those partners and some of our other partners face in higher education. So from our research and work, we understand that a positive user experience requires basic usability. Websites that followed usability guidelines are seen to be more intuitive, and users are able to complete tasks successfully. Makes sense, right? We find that prospect drop-off due to program confusion can be challenging for students to find common information, things like program or degrees. And with academic offerings, if they're unclear or misunderstood, it can lead to lost site engagement or losing prospects to competitors with stronger UX. So here's a quote from a prospective student during a usability study done by Nielsen Norman Group. When navigating school websites, users were asked if they would be interested in attending those schools. And this user was unable to find mathematics listed on the academics program page, and therefore lost interest in continuing to engage with the brand. So we see right here, the user said, I don't see a math section here, so then I would probably not go towards this college anymore. So we see a lost opportunity there. So let's take a look at how we approach student engagement goals for one of our clients, Emory-Goizueta Business School. Emory's Goizueta Business School ranks as a top-tier business school, and the marketing website is Goizueta's core digital asset and key investment to achieve their mission. So one of the UX features of this website is an interactive program comparison chart. This leverages some common behaviors that people demonstrate as they relate to product design. It helps users in achieving their goals and both effectively and quickly. So we designed this feature by considering the existing products of the market and some of that psychology that Celeste mentioned earlier, as well as the culture of our users. This helps to avoid any kind of confusion and frustration that we saw in the previous comment. So I'm going to see if this will come up. Let's see. Okay, so previously, historically, sites and academic programs are just listed as landing pages, but this feature is the program comparison chart. So when the user goes to the program comparison chart, they can look at the different programs in these cards. And there's also these micro interactions as you mouse over them that allows the user to explore further. So I'm going to select these three programs here: undergraduate BBA, 1-year MBA, and 2-year MBA. I'm going to see which one looks better to me. Do I want to do it in 2 years or 1 year? So if I go down here and click compare programs, it loads up this chart. So it pulls them up side by side. And we know through digital psychology and persuasions that users are nudged to make a decision when they are given multiple choices. So if there's 3 options available, they will be nudged to select one versus just 2. So we wanted to be able to allow them to consider 3 options, but not give them more than 4, because that would be an overload of what we call cognitive load. So we want to measure and make sure that we give them less than 3 to compare. So here you can see the features of the program. So there's a brief overview. And again, as Celeste mentioned, it's scannable information and it's data. It's easily digestible. So we can see class size right here, 399 students versus 50 students versus 150. So I know if I want a smaller class size, the 1-year MBA is a program for me. So by understanding what's important to the users of Goisweta and prospects and students looking at MBAs, we can put that content right at the forefront and give them different options to compare. And then give them a way to exit. So the user can go back to the program list very easily and can select different programs. So say, I want to look at the evening MBA versus the 2-year MBA and compare those programs. And here's a side by side. So we can see one, I need to have 5 years of work experience versus 6 years. So very personalized, customizable. And also the way that we built this feature is that the client can go and edit all of this content very easily. And this was a top priority, is addressing just the pain and drop off of programs. So, all right, let's jump back. All right, so another challenge on designing websites for higher ed is building trust and transparency and credibility. So this is created through the sum of many interactions and touch points that a brand has with their customer. Trust is the strongest currency of our growing shared economy. And here are some questions to ask in order to build better relationships with your customers. So, does your site pass the first impressions test by answering top questions? Does it include concrete facts that people care about? And does that content feature numbers? So as we just saw in the program comparison chart, there's quick facts that are easy to digest. Also steer clear of hollow phrases of jargon that can be confusing for users. So really avoiding the lofty marketing speak and sticking to the facts and giving users the information that they're looking for. So here's another quote from a prospective student during the usability study that I mentioned before. It was by the Nielsen Norman Group. So when navigating school websites, users were asked for feedback about their experience. This user was quite frustrated, we can see, from not being able to find the information that was valuable to him. So this is what this person said. There are too many words above the ranking. Why don't they put that information at the top of the page? I can relate to this. It's so frustrating when we are scanning and looking for the information and we can't find it. It's painful. So this is something that we really want to consider in our content strategy. So start telling stories from the moment that people land on your site. We as humans really can relate to stories. So just writing content with that understanding really helps people to relate to the content. Transparency is a key principle in building trust with users. So make facts prominent and at the beginning of the experience. Use facts. My studies show that numbers really attract attention. So using those scannable highlights that we mentioned, users will consume the information best in small, digestible chunks, and just appeal with summaries, but most of all, don't make them work hard to meet you. I think that's all relationships. Okay, so let's take a look at how we applied these concepts in our redesign for Emory Goisweta University. We created an animated data point component, and this features lives at the top of the page experiences so that users can easily gather ranking, authority, and credibility to build trust with the brand. And also what's great about this is that it allows each department to tell their own story, which empowers stakeholders and content authors. Celeste touched on that earlier. Is some of the challenges that we face is really empowering those different departments and stakeholders to be able to have their priorities on the website. All right, so also, as I mentioned, you can see that the full-time MBA program, you can see the different data here. So best in the US for full-time MBA, average salary and bonus, I can see it's 130,000. That's very interesting to me. I want to learn more about that. And then the student to faculty ratio 5:1, I can see if this is something that's valuable to me in my student journey. Is this what I'm looking for? So very easy to find. Also the circles really draw the eye in. And you'll see in this next screen, they're animated. So this is an example of how micro animations such as this can serve in a number of ways. So they're considered delighters in the UX, and they draw the eye to the data. And side note, they produce a dopamine result or a dopamine response, which it results in a positive experience for our users. And I always joke, like, just ask our kids or people who love video games, because it can be quite pleasurable to play with animation. So again, as I just mentioned, let's talk about something that we're all familiar with working in higher education, and that's competing priorities. So one common issue that we see with schools is that sometimes there might be a conflict of interest between departments. So how do we address this? When we kick off our projects, we begin with a discovery session, and in this workshop, we air all grievances of the current site. So what's working, what isn't working. We interview everyone so that everyone has a chance to be heard. We really want to know what the pain is for everyone using the system. Then there's a core team that is the final approval, and that includes that holds final approval, and that includes the decision-making unit. So one of the hot pieces of real estate between stakeholders is often the homepage, specifically sometimes the header. So here are some tips when considering your content strategy. So first and foremost, welcome your users just as if you are greeting someone coming into your home. You want to make them feel welcome and show them who you are. So you introduce yourself by stating your brand message, and tell them what happens here, what you stand for, and how that can tie to a hopeful outcome. Then you have the opportunity to showcase research to establish authority. You can feature stories and news, which is also, and it's also a great way to promote events. I really try to avoid placing blanketed statements in this area, or you really use it to give information that sets you apart. One way to solve for competing priorities is to give your stakeholders a peek and make them part of your campaign planning. So campaign planning should occur every year. We often do this in partnership with our clients to help them establish KPIs and website goals that Celeste touched on earlier in our presentation. And a campaign calendar is a great way to plan content for both school research, alumni, and staff. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jay to talk some more about some solutions that we have for accomplishing these types of goals, including Rain University.
Thank you, Cherie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi, this is Jay Calicott. I am our VP of Tech Ops, and today I'm going to be showing you some solutions that we've built specifically to address the needs of higher ed organizations. The first solution I'm going to be showing you is our new Rain University CMS. This platform is a university flavor of our award-winning Rain distribution for Drupal. And so what we've done is package a lot of features and components that are common for university projects into one base platform. And the goal is simply to save time and effort for these type of projects. So let's look at some of the some examples of some of the features that ship with Rain U out of the box. First of all, we have the kind of ubiquitous hero area component. I'll just rattle these off here one by one here. We've got a featured content area with some image links that you can configure. This latest news area is interesting. This is actually a view that we've embedded. So we've got a feature that allows you to embed any view in Drupal that's available on your Drupal site. So if you have somebody with some site building skills who can create a view, then you can embed it anywhere on the site. And we ship with a few different pre-configured views like this one. We have some features for carousels like quote carousel and event carousel. And then we also have a place to drop in third-party embed. So a lot of universities have virtual tours hosted elsewhere. And so those third parties usually give you some sort of script that you drop into the page. And so we have a way to do that. And for it to look, and it still looks good alongside your other components on the page. Now, this area is interesting. So this is another feature where we allow you to drop in any web form that you have on your site. So if you're familiar with the web form module in Drupal, it allows you to build forms within your browser and Again, this is a feature that allows you to drop in any of those forms anywhere on the site. And I'll show you what the backend looks like here in a minute. And then this is another embed. It's very common to have some sort of social aggregator feature. We like to use third parties for that as well. And so this is another example. I'll hop on over to the academics page, and I'm just going to show you a few more examples before we look at the back end. We've got another alternate hero up here at the top. We have a lot of different like card components for featuring content snippets around the site. Another carousel, more cards. We've got a little FAQ feature that's in an accordion, and then another embed example, this time a Google Map embed. Now, some example use cases for RainU would be like a microsite that you need to spin up quickly, a department site, or really any university project. The value of this platform as we see it are those projects where you are able to leverage a lot of this base functionality with some level of customization. So let's take a look here at the back end and see what we've done to improve the admin experience. So what you're seeing here is our brand new Rain admin that we're going to be releasing in December, along with a Drupal 9 compatible version of Rain. Now, what we like about these updates is that they provide a cleaner, more organized UX for the content editor. So let me show you an example. So let's edit that homepage we were looking at a minute ago. One of my favorite features is this little jump nav that we've added. And so it allows editors to easily jump around and navigate the page. You see we have several fields on the page and they're grouped into different headings. And this is a control that I really like. It's really simple, but very effective. We also did some cleanup with the visuals related to paragraphs. So if you're familiar, in Drupal, there's a tool called Paragraphs. This is one of our favorite tools because it pairs nicely with those components that I was showing you on the homepage. It makes it easy to add those. So let's take a look at a couple of these. I mentioned earlier that you can embed a view anywhere on the site if it's already been defined in Drupal. So this is an example of that, embedding our latest news view. You've got a quote carousel. You drop in a couple quotes and they'll render in as a carousel. We had several embed examples. Again, we don't, try to reinvent the wheel. If there's a good third-party plugin, then just have a place to drop it in. And so that's an example there of our virtual tour. And I'll show you just one more example here. Again, that web form feature that allows you to add any web form that you've defined on the site. Now, we really do feel like this is the secret sauce here of the RainU CMS, is this whole component library that provides all, all of this functionality out of the box. We have something like 15 to 20 different paragraphs. This is our little paragraph picker. And so all of these are available to drop onto the page, and they're all integrated with our theme system. So if we look over in our theme layer here, this is a Pattern Lab style guide. And this is where all the components are actually defined in HTML and CSS. And so what this means is that out of the box, we've got our theme system already integrated with all these paragraph components. And so again, you're going to immediately be able to start adding content and building pages. Now we do have some controls for updating or customizing the appearance from the browser. While it is limited, it is something that could make sense for, let's say, a microsite where you want to match your branding, but the site is small in scope and you don't want to spend a lot of time or money on it. So with this, you can go in, you can change the colors, you can change the logo, and pretty soon, once you start adding content, it's going to, in imagery from your organization, it's going to start looking like your site. So just as an example, I changed the color scheme a little bit. It's not as obvious on that page. It's a little bit different. So that's handy, but what's going to be more typical is that you're going to have a very specific brand guide, a header, a footer for your organization. And so most most universities are going to need some level of theme customization. And so that's where our approach is straightforward and still saves a lot of time. So what our creative team does, Shree's team, is they take your brand style guide, they adapt it to our design system, then our developers can customize the theme to fit your brand perfectly. Again, the goal here is to get you up and running so that you can focus on those strategic decisions, content decisions, things that Celeste was talking about earlier, things that are really going to deliver results. And that's really the whole mindset of this type of platform. We aren't trying to invent every feature that you would ever need. We're trying to deliver a solid baseline of features and functionality that's going to equip your content team and get the project done faster. So next, I wanted to show you our new multi-site feature, which we call Multi-Site Plus. You probably know that Drupal allows you to create as many instances of your site as you want. You can share the content structure, the theme, the configuration, but have as many databases as your web host will allow. And this is great for university departments and microsites and many other use cases. Now, the catch here is that it's not easy to set up necessarily without a developer. Now, Pantheon does have a very handy tool, which is called Custom Upstreams. With Custom Upstreams, you do have this web interface where you can create new instances of your site. Now, a developer is still required to set it up initially, but then once it's been set up, a less technical person can go through and create new sites. Now, with that said, there are still a couple steps where things can go wrong. And so we've got a solution that even simplifies this even more. We added a tool that allows you to kick off these new installs directly from your Drupal site. So you just submit this form. We configure the module to point to your Pantheon upstream. And like I said, you submit the form and it kicks off that new install and it'll email you with a login. So it also works great with Rain University because again, you would be able to create new department sites or microsites or whatever you want. It's going to be preloaded with that sample content. If we did any sort of customizations to the theme, that'll be available to all the different sites. Okay. And I just wanted to show you one more thing before I wrap up my part is I wanted to show you a new service called Automated Updates. So this again is a solution that we've built simply to save organizations time and budget. Well, one of the more tedious aspects of maintaining Drupal is that Drupal has frequent updates to modules and core. Updates need to be applied by a developer and tested in a non-production environment, then QA'd before being released to your live website. And that's important because not every update is going to apply correctly. Sometimes there's bugs, sometimes things will break. So it is a tedious process. It's going to eat up some developer time and some QA time that's going to eat into that budget that we would much rather spend on, on new features, for example. And so what we did is we tried to just automate and streamline the entire process. Now, I promise I'm not going to get into the technical weeds, but I do want you to understand the value of what we've done. So now when a change is detected, there's a ticket created. We use Jira for all of our project management. And so a ticket's created. What you're looking at on this previous screen is a pull request that captures the actual code change that was detected. And then we have visual regression tests. This helps automatically look for problems if it detects some sort of visual change. And then finally we have this feature where it will auto stage the changes on a Pantheon environment. And so what this means is that we haven't spent a second of developer time up to this point, and we get to skip right to that manual testing step where we do some final verification before we merge in the change. So this is where you would still need to merge in the change, but it's just a push button. And then once that change is merged, it's going to be scheduled for your next release. And so all that to say, it's still a controlled process, but we've cut out all of this overhead. And so the net result is time saved that we can spend on other things. So this is a service we include for all of our customers, including customers who might be using Rain University. And I want to say, even if you have your own developers, excuse me, excuse me, who do their own updates, this is still a really useful tool, and it's going to save time and effort for your team. So that is the last solution. I know we're running a little short on time. So we would love your feedback on all of these. We're continually trying to deliver more value for our higher ed customers. So we'd love to know what you think of these type of solutions, and any ideas or feedback on how we can better serve universities. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Michael Silverman, and he's going to talk about some packages and services we offer for universities, including some of the solutions that I've shown you today.
Thanks, Jay. It is really important in these times to think about ways to do things more efficiently, because everybody's budget is being cut. So Rain U CMS that we've shown here today is a Drupal-based site pre-configured with what a small college or department needs, including things like hero images and latest news and events and quotes carousel, FAQ, featured events, and really much, much more. We start with Rain U, and then for a low fixed price, we'll customize the components with your branding and styles and build out the site and navigation structure to your needs. So we can include managed hosting from Pantheon. We can include site improve reporting to help focus on SEO and accessibility, and the multi-site capability and automated updates that Jay just mentioned. So you're not going to do like the University of Texas with Rain U, but for smaller colleges and departments, when you can quickly get a site up and running and then work with our team to make incremental improvements over time, allowing your team to retain flexibility and be responsive to visitors' needs rather than a big bang approach to building a new site. That's what you can do with Rain U. If you want to know more, reach out and we'll be happy to give you a specific quote.
All right, thank you all for all of the great information shared. One last thing before we open up for questions. We have a checklist to help facilitate conversations and planning for your upcoming website redesign. You can access the checklist using the link here. Otherwise, we'll also be sharing the link to download the checklist in the webinar recap email we'll be sending out. So we will jump into questions. So one that came in was, do you recommend using a pop-up survey on your higher ed site with questions on what their experience is like prior to a redesign?
I can answer that. So any feedback that you can gather from your audience is super valuable, but you do not want to, you want to minimize the impact and the annoyance of having a pop-up when they go to the site. I would say there's a tool called Hotjar, which is hotjar.com. There's a free version, and it has a fantastic set of features that you can use. There's a type of instead of a pop-up where it's a modal that comes straight in front of you and kind of blocks the screen. It's a little, almost like a little chat widget, but it's a survey. And so it comes up in the bottom footer on the right side where a chat would. So it's a little less intrusive, and you can use that. You can install Hotjar on your site and you can gather insights like user behavior. You can record user behavior if people are clicking and fumbling around, but you can also get direct feedback. I would also say, if it is possible to do some focus groups, that would be super ideal, so that you can ask all types of students, alumni versus incoming versus undergrad versus graduate students. And you can just get a few, it doesn't need to be a grandiose thing, just at least 10, 15 people, and be able to ask them sets of questions, and their opinions would be super helpful. That is typically sometimes part of the discovery process, depending on how much time and budget you have. But if you do that internally and at least start to gather those, Hotjar is a big bang for your buck. And okay, and then I think we have a couple other questions, which I think Jay can grab the next one.
Yeah, the next question, I'm curious as to why a specific content type was created for the home page as opposed to maybe a panel or using the layout builder in Drupal 8.9. Was there a limitation with those other options? Also, do you envision more than one node being created using the homepage content type?
Yes, so I'll try to tackle that. There's definitely different ways you could do a homepage. I have done it every which way. I've done Drupal development now for 15 years, and there's different approaches. We like Layout Builder. We're going to do more with Layout Builder in the next version of Rain now that it's more stable. But we were kind of playing the waiting game part of this year while we were still waiting for it to kind of solidify as a stable solution. So the thing that I like about making homepage an actual content type is that it gives you a consistent interface for your editors, so they know everything's in one spot and sort of looks the same. I like that it's generally easier to translate as well. And again, it kind of goes back to just not having to throw a different interface at them. So you could certainly do blocks or panels or layout builder for the homepage, and that's fine. I just don't like having, I've learned over the years, I don't like having to train content people on different interfaces to say, well, if you're on the homepage, you have to do it this way. But if you're on a landing page, which looks like very similar to the homepage, you do it like a completely different way. So it's sort of a philosophical thing, but I like having just everything be sort of consistent and be Drupal nodes basically. And so I think it's an advantage that way, but there's sort of no wrong way to do anything in Drupal. This is just the approach that we like to take. Now, as far as do you envision more than one node being created? So another advantage. So we definitely talked about translation. Still, it's technically like one node, even if you have translations. But sometimes we have alternate homepages. So we want to do A/B testing, or we want to stage a new homepage and keep it unpublished until we're ready to just sort of switch them out. So that's another advantage of building it in this way. So you can get your new homepage ready. Once it's ready to go, unpublish the old one, publish the new one, change the path so that it's like the same path or whatever, set it to the homepage, to the front page, and then you're good to go. So that's another advantage. So I hope I answered that okay.
We have a couple other RainU related questions, Jay. So one
Okay.
was, is the RainU CMS available for download? Is it free?
Is it free? So is it available for download? So for right now, we are making it initially available to our customers. So it's open source, but it's not being publicly released. That could change in the future. We're wrapping up our final QA, and so the launch is going to be in December for that. And was there another question? Did I miss?
You sort of answered it. Another
Okay.
one was related to when is RainU going to be released?
Great.
So we covered that. Another question, do you offer accessibility audits? I think earlier we talked about, Celeste talked about accessibility, but wondering if you offer audits.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing about audits is we have some, I mentioned that you can take at a glance view if you add the Chrome extension, Site Improve Chrome extension. And we do audits, and several people do audits, but it's important to understand that for a true accessibility audit, there are some automated tools that we use, but there's also a human actually manually testing. So we are simulating using the screen readers. We are role playing exactly how someone would use the site with assistive technology, and that can't really be duplicated. So that is something that we do. Yes, absolutely, we do. Automated and human.
Okay. Then we have how, as we're working with a lot of clients, how do you make a project successful?
I can take that one. So I would suggest asking whoever is leading the project what the definition of success looks like, and allowing that to be the guiding light of priorities, and really just practicing good communication skills. So listening, really taking good notes and documentation, and then fostering a team of culture, really a team of culture really leads to success. So leading by example and listening and contributing and being supportive will all help lead to a successful project.
Okay, there's just a couple more questions, but yeah, if you have others, just go ahead and enter them. How are schools handling recruiting and lead generation due to COVID? What are you guys seeing?
I can take that one. It's really changed things up with lead generation, sort of the leading indicator for people coming to the school was people taking the tours, and the tours are generally off nowadays. So schools are trying all types of different things to create that channel and get the students in. And then the other thing that they're really not quite so sure about is what are the conversion rates going to be. These generally are consistent year over year, but this year is so different. So it's really up in the air, and everyone's really trying as much as possible to get as much traffic as they can to showcase the school as they did in the old days.
All right, and I think we have time for one more question. Do you offer any type of training?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yes, we do actually offer training. We do host different workshops throughout the year. That's sort of like general training, but we also do like custom training for clients. What that looks like is a lot of times when we do a project, at the conclusion of the project, we create some custom training documentation. We'll have a couple different sort of like training sessions with whoever needs to, whoever's like on the content team or site administrators, and we'll walk them through everything to make sure like they feel fully confident in being able to take the day-to-day content management of the site. So
And to get a
yeah.
taste of that, they can check out our learning bits on YouTube.
Yep.
Putting a lot of our training up there.
Yep. So we put out a lot of content on that, and we've also have on our website some more information, mediacurrent.com/training.
Okay. So that looks like that's all we have for questions today and wraps up our presentation. Please visit our site at mediacurrent.com for upcoming webinars. We typically have them monthly. As mentioned, we will providing the recording, so be on the lookout for that. And thanks again to all the presenters and to everyone that tuned in today. We hope to see you next time, and everyone have a great day.